I was visiting my hometown of Minneapolis a few weeks ago and was talking about this problem of runaway consumption with a childhood friend, Ken Greer, when he said to me, "There's something I have to show you, Tom." We drove out to a strip mall off 494 and Route 169. "Okay, look at this," Ken said as we drove in. It was hard to miss. On both sides of the entrance to this mall were Caribou coffee shops, the Minnesota version of Starbucks. How could one strip mall need two Caribou coffees? So we went into the one on the right. I ordered my skim latte and asked the barista, "Explain something to me. Your Caribou coffee, and there's another one right over there. I can see it from here. Why are there two Caribou coffees less than 100 yards apart?" Well, she explained it was very simple. There were long lines here in the morning, so we needed another one. "I see," I said to myself, because people had to wait in line a little longer at rush hour in the morning for their coffee. They couldn't just add another coffee machine. They had to build a whole carbon copy coffee shop. Hey, why not? Money was cheap, resources were available. Why not have two of the same coffee shop in the same mall? None of this manifested the breakdown of values more, though, than the subprime mortgage fiasco. At the height of the subprime craze, one Los Angeles mortgage broker told me mortgages were being given out by banks to anyone who could fog up a knife. People with no credit rating, or some without even a steady job, were being given liar loans, to buy houses they could no way manage to keep. The whole system was built on two principles, IBG and YBG. I'll be gone or you'll be gone when things go bad. The mortgage broker who first sold the mortgage and then passed it off to a bigger financial institution like Citibank knew that if the buyer defaulted, IBG, I'll be gone. Or he told the buyer that you'll be gone if there's a problem because the housing market would always go up, so you could always make the payments by just flipping the house. The rating agencies whose fees and incomes depended on how many of these bonds they got to rate had a great incentive to give them high ratings, and if they blew up, no problem, IBG, I'll be gone. And the investment banks who sold them all over the world had an enormous incentive to push them out to hundreds of countries. Who cared? IBG, when they blow up, I'll be gone. In other words, the whole system depended upon a decline in basic values, ethics, risk management, and accountability between borrowers, brokers, lenders, and investors. We didn't need to study hard and build a solid educational foundation to enjoy a new home. We didn't need to save and build a record of credit. The bank around the corner online would borrow the money from China and lend it to us. But you can only do that for so long. My friend Rob Watson, who invented LEED buildings, always likes to say, you know, if you jump off the top floor of an 80-story building, you can actually feel like you're flying for 79 stories. It's the sudden stop at the end that gets you. Friends, we just had our sudden stop at the end. And that's why the first task for the regeneration, all of us together though, is to restore some of these basic values of hard work and accountability that got us to where we were as a country once. So whatever ethics you learned in Philosophy 101, whatever uncompromising idealism was spawned in you by a professor you so admired, whatever unbending convictions about what is right and wrong, black and white, which you stuck to in student government debates, even when your cause seemed lost, whatever principled behavior you demanded from the administration here or from fellow students supporting the same cause, whatever you do, do not leave it here. There is nothing our country needs more right now. But we also need the regeneration not to help us only in restoring basic values, but also in creating real things of value. You see, we can't borrow our way out of this economic crisis. We can't stimulate our way out of this economic crisis with more deficit spending. We can't get out of this crisis by just adding another Caribou coffee to every mall. We cannot get out of this crisis by just flipping each other more hamburgers and houses. We have to invent and innovate our way out of this crisis. We have to get away from just financial engineering, designing more and more exotic ways to make money from money, and get back to real engineering of stuff and services that people need to make their lives more productive, more healthy, more environmentally sound, and more enjoyable. The only way a society advances is by inventing things that satisfy people's wants and needs, like a computer or a new form of energy, or creating things that satisfy needs you never knew you had, like the need to Google or listen to music on an iPod, and then selling them to others. Yes, we need good engineers to design those things, but we also need liberal arts grads to imagine those things. And that's again where you come in. I'm a big believer that imagination Imagination is the single most important competitive advantage you can have today. You can go online and hire anyone to do the programming. You can go to Amazon.com and hire them to do your shipping and handling. You can go to freelancer.com to get someone to draw up your logo. But imagining the idea of a new product or project or movement or NGO, that's where the magic is. And a liberal arts education is the best fountain I know of for imagination. After all, where does imagination come from? Mark Tucker, who heads the National Center for Education and the Economy, once said this to me: "One thing I know about creativity is that it typically occurs when people who have mastered two or more quite different fields use the framework in one to think afresh about the other." Intuitively, you know this to be true. Leonardo da Vinci was a great artist, scientist, and inventor, and each specialty nourished the other. He was a great lateral thinker, said Tucker. But if you spend your whole life in one silo, you will never have either the knowledge or mental agility to do the synthesis, connect the dots, which is where the next great breakthrough is found. So I don't know how many art, music, literature, and science courses you have been able to take while you've been here, but I hope it was the full buffet, because the imaginative spark that gives birth to great ideas, products, designs, and intellectual breakthroughs often happens when people who have mastered two or more quite different fields use the framework in one to think afresh about the other, and then mash them together into something that no one else has thought of. The geek who can teach you that best is actually Apple computer founder Steve Jobs. In his own graduation address at Stanford several years ago, Steve told the following story of how he went to Reed College, a radical liberal arts college in Oregon. He dropped out, though, after one semester, was totally bored. Here's what he said: "The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked interesting. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on." Let me give you an example, he said. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the world. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphied. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying amounts of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle, in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life, said Steve. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would never have had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. He had to get that in. If I had never dropped out, concluded Steve, I would have never dropped in on this calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have had the wonderful typography they do today.